The United States military just sank Iranian warships. Bombs are landing on naval headquarters, and the Strait of Hormuz is on fire. U.S. warships, stealth bombers, and cruise missiles are hitting Iran from multiple directions at the same time, and over 200 commercial vessels are sitting dead in the water right now because Hormuz has turned into an active combat zone. Washington is not just striking targets, it is trying to erase Iran's ability to fight at sea. And we need to talk about mines in the Strait of Hormuz, because that threat alone changes everything. Before we get into the confirmed kills, the hardware, and the casualty numbers that just changed everything, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Nobody else is breaking this down the way we do. Reuters is reporting that Trump says U.S. forces destroyed and sunk 9 Iranian naval ships, with a separate strike that largely destroyed Iran's naval headquarters. 9 ships, that is the claim. Now here is what CENTCOM has actually confirmed. U.S. forces struck a Jamaran-class corvette while it sat at a pier in Chah Bahar, and that ship is sinking. Chah Bahar is not inside the Persian Gulf. It sits on the Gulf of Oman, on the outside approach to Hormuz. That is one of Iran's few deep-water ports with direct access to open ocean shipping lanes. Hitting a warship there tells Tehran something very specific. Even at your most dispersed posture, even outside the bottleneck of the inner Gulf, even where you thought you had room to run, we can reach you. And this was not some patrol boat. Naval News describes the Jamaran-class as one of Iran's primary domestically built surface combatants. 1,500 tons, armed with Noor anti-ship missiles derived from the Chinese C-802 family, a 76mm main gun, surface-to-air missiles, and torpedoes. Naval News describes the Jamaran-class as one of Iran's primary domestically built surface combatants, and the Americans sank it at its own dock. Think about what that does to every Iranian naval commander right now. Do you send your remaining ships out to sea and risk getting tracked and picked off one by one? Or do you keep them in port knowing a Tomahawk can arrive at any moment? Both choices are terrible. That is the trap Washington just built. And there is another reason this pierside strike matters. CENTCOM confirmed the corvette was hit while it was docked, but it did not publicly walk the world through the exact weapon, platform, or flight profile used to do it. When the delivery method is not disclosed, Tehran has to assume multiple pathways at once: cruise missiles, standoff air munitions, or a strike package operating under an umbrella of suppression that Iran cannot fully map in real time. Ambiguity forces overreaction. Overreaction burns readiness. Now step into the Iranian Navy's internal reality. A modern warship at pier is surrounded by the things that make a fleet function: fuel points, maintenance equipment, spare parts, communications runs, and crew quarters. A pier strike does not just remove a hull. It tells every Iranian commander that the support ecosystem is targetable. That means sortie generation slows down even for ships that are still intact, because you cannot sail what you cannot fuel, arm, or repair. And this is why the phrase "sinking Iran's navy" can be misleading if you picture a dramatic sea battle. The reporting we have in hand points to something more clinical. If you can hit combatants and naval infrastructure at or near their home facilities, you do not need to chase them across the water to neutralize them. You turn ports into liabilities, and the fleet becomes a set of stationary targets. Now look back at the political claim. Reuters reports Trump says 9 ships were sunk and naval headquarters was largely destroyed. That is not yet an itemized list in public reporting, and that matters. In modern operations, battle damage assessments come in waves, and what leadership says at the top can run ahead of what commands publish line by line. The safe framing is simple. The claim is big, the confirmed anchor is already serious, and the gap between them is where the next updates will land. Share this with everyone you know, because the United States just sank an Iranian warship at its own pier, and the implications for the entire Persian Gulf are only beginning to register. But here is what makes this far bigger than one corvette at a dock. The naval strikes are running alongside a full-spectrum attack on Iranian military infrastructure designated Operation Epic Fury. Military Times reports Tomahawk cruise missiles were launched from U.S. Navy warships, including a confirmed image of the USS Thomas Hudner, an Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer, firing a Tomahawk in support of the operation. Military Times reports Tomahawk launches from U.S. Navy warships and published an image of USS Thomas Hudner firing a Tomahawk in support of the operation. Reuters separately confirmed that the United States deployed B-2 Spirit stealth bombers against Iran's underground missile facilities using 2,000-pound bombs. Most people think a bombing campaign means jets dropping ordnance from high altitude. In reality, when you hear B-2 plus 2,000-pound penetrators plus underground facilities, you are hearing about a specific effort to crack hardened bunkers that Iran spent years burying beneath rock and concrete. That is not a general-purpose strike. That is targeted infrastructure elimination. Think about the operational sequence being described here. First wave, Tomahawks from standoff range, hitting air defenses, command and control nodes, fixed installations. Follow-on wave, B-2 bombers delivering heavy penetrating munitions against hardened, buried targets that cruise missiles alone cannot reach. And simultaneously, pier-side strikes erasing surface combatants, so Iran cannot surge warships into the strait to complicate the picture. That is textbook joint campaign architecture. Air, naval, and cruise missile assets all operating against different layers of the same problem at the same time. Then came the confirmation that shifted the political dimension entirely. CENTCOM confirmed 3 U.S. service members killed in action and 5 seriously wounded. That is blood on the table. And in Washington, casualties do not create caution. They harden resolve. Every historical precedent says the same thing. Once American forces take losses, the political appetite for escalation goes up, not down, and the appetite for pausing to negotiate drops sharply. Anyone expecting a ceasefire to follow those numbers is misreading how Washington processes combat deaths. Share this with everyone you know, because U.S. forces have taken casualties in direct combat with Iran, and the likelihood of expanded strikes just increased dramatically. And here is where the crisis bleeds into the global economy. Reuters reports at least 3 commercial tankers have been damaged. 1 seafarer has been killed. Over 200 vessels are now sitting at anchor across the Strait of Hormuz and surrounding waters, refusing to move. Iran says it has closed navigation through the strait entirely. A U.S. Navy-led Maritime Information Center said no official international suspension had been declared, but shipping activity shows widespread hesitation and anchoring. The United Nations International Maritime Organization has urged shipping companies to avoid the area until conditions improve. Port operations at Jebel Ali, one of the largest commercial ports in the Middle East and a critical logistics hub for the entire Gulf region, have paused. Think about the scale of what is freezing up. Roughly 20% of global oil supply transits the Strait of Hormuz in normal times. That is approximately 20 million barrels per day. When 200-plus vessels drop anchor and Jebel Ali shuts down, insurance markets spike, energy futures react, and every downstream economy from Tokyo to Berlin starts pricing in disruption risk. This is not theoretical. This is happening right now. But here is what nobody expected to become the secondary battlefield. The shipping lanes off Oman. Reuters reports at least 3 tankers were damaged in the area and 1 seafarer was killed in the incidents. Separately, a Palau-flagged tanker under U.S. sanctions was hit off Oman's Musandam Peninsula, injuring 4 people. And here's the critical detail. Reuters explicitly notes it was not immediately clear who launched the projectiles or drones damaging commercial ships. Attribution is still murky, and that uncertainty is exactly what terrifies marine insurers. When you cannot confirm who is shooting, you cannot calculate risk. When you cannot calculate risk, premiums go through the roof and shipping stops entirely. Then the situation escalated another level with a mechanism that does not require a single missile. Reuters reporting tied to the European Union's Operation Aspides describes commercial vessels receiving VHF radio transmissions attributed to Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. The message was blunt. No ship is allowed to pass the Strait of Hormuz. A ship captain does not need confirmed intelligence about mines or missiles to stop moving. A credible voice on VHF, plus a burning tanker on the horizon, is more than enough. That is psychological area denial, and it is working. Traffic has frozen. Think about what Iran has accomplished with that single transmission. They have turned Hormuz into a barrier without deploying a single additional weapon. Ships are not moving because the risk calculation has flipped. The cost of transit now exceeds the cost of sitting still. And here is the threat that every maritime security source is now flagging, the one that keeps analysts awake at night. Reuters reports maritime security sources are warning about the risk of mines being laid in the narrow navigation channels of the Strait of Hormuz. The reporting also notes prior U.S. concerns about Iranian naval mine-loading activity observed in earlier months. Iran has an extensive inventory of sea mines, including older contact mines and more sophisticated influence mines that can sit on the seabed and detonate when they detect a specific acoustic or magnetic signature. Maritime security sources have warned about the risk of mines. Even a credible mine threat can sharply reduce transits until routes are verified clear. Insurance companies will not cover transit through a mined waterway, and no captain will sail it without mine-sweeping confirmation. The Strait of Hormuz is barely 34 miles wide at its narrowest point, with navigable shipping channels much tighter than that. Mining, even a small portion, would be catastrophic. Now bring it all together. Why is sinking Iran's navy happening at the pier instead of at sea? Because the confirmed CENTCOM strike was pierside at Chah Bahar. Military Times imagery and reporting describe carrier aviation continuing operations, Tomahawk salvos, and heavy bomb strikes on missile storage and command sites. The logic is straightforward. If you destroy warships in port, you deny Iran the ability to surge those vessels into the strait to contest maritime lanes. Even if Iran retains swarm boats and asymmetric assets like fast attack craft and anti-ship missiles launched from shore, removing the larger surface combatants strips away Iran's ability to project anything resembling a conventional naval presence. They are not fighting for control of the sea. They are erasing the fleet before it sails. Share this with everyone you know, because the Strait of Hormuz is functionally closing and the consequences for global energy markets are real and immediate. Now here is what we do not have publicly, and framing it correctly matters. A full, itemized list of the 9 ships Trump claims were sunk has not appeared in a single authoritative release from the wire services yet. CENTCOM has confirmed one named warship, the Jamaran-class corvette at Chah Bahar. The gap between the political claim and the confirmed military record does not mean the claim is false. It means the full battle damage assessment is still being processed or has not been released. Battle damage from Naval HQ has not been shown with specific target imagery in the public reporting beyond Trump's statement. An attribution for the tanker strikes near Oman remains unclear. The honest framing is this: Trump claims 9. CENTCOM confirms one named hull sinking. The shipping lanes are already bleeding. So let me run through this fast. Trump says 9 Iranian warships destroyed. CENTCOM confirms Jamaran-class corvette sinking pierside at Chah Bahar. B-2 stealth bombers dropped 2,000-pound bombs on underground missile infrastructure. Tomahawk launches confirmed from USS Thomas Hudner, Arleigh Burke-class destroyer. 3 U.S. service members killed, 5 seriously wounded, 3 commercial tankers damaged, 1 seafarer dead, over 200 vessels at anchor. IMO warns all shipping to avoid the area. Jebel Ali port operations paused. Vessels receiving IRGC VHF warnings. No transit allowed through Hormuz. Maritime security sources now flagging mine risk in the strait's navigation channels. Iran claims total closure of Hormuz. War risk insurance surging. Energy markets reacting. One thing is absolutely certain. Washington is executing a campaign designed to neutralize Iran's ability to threaten Hormuz by destroying naval assets at pier, demolishing command infrastructure, and smashing the hardened missile facilities that underpin Iran's deterrence posture. And the commercial world is already behaving as though the strait is closed. Whether the next 72 hours bring an expanded strike package against remaining Iranian naval bases or a fragile attempt at de-escalation will determine if 2026 becomes the year Hormuz turned into a permanent fault line for the global economy. We will see what unfolds in the coming days. Stay tuned.